Hello everyone, this is Jen and I make useful English Lit study videos on Shakespeare, poetry, fiction, literary devices and more to help you get top grades in the subject. So today we are going to be doing another top grade essay walkthrough on A Christmas Carol, and following the one that I did on 2017 AQA past paper, today we'll be looking at the 2018 past paper question instead. So, and by the way guys, if throughout this video I'm looking downwards, that's because I'm looking at a separate laptop which I'm projecting the slide deck that I'm showing actually on screen right now. So, in the question, we're asked to read the following extract taken from chapter 4 of A Christmas Carol and then answer the question that follows. So, the context for this extract is that Scrooge meets the ghost of Christmas yet to come. So, it's that passage that begins with the phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. Okay, so guys, if you need to refer to this passage throughout the course of this video, feel free to either have your own copy next to this video as you work through my analysis, or you can take a screenshot of whatever's on the screen right now and juxtapose it with the video as you watch it. Okay, so starting with this extract, explore how Dickens presents Scrooge's fears in A Christmas Carol, and we're asked to write about how Dickens presents what Scrooge is frightened of in this extract and how Dickens presents Scrooge's fears in the novel as a whole. Okay, so very much the focus is on what Scrooge is frightened of. Okay, so there's going to be some characterization, obviously, that we'll need to be looking at, but a lot of psychological analysis as well, okay, of the protagonist. So let's dive straight into it. So intro paragraph. In this extract from the start of chapter 4 in A Christmas Carol, Scrooge has already experienced a series of haunting, troubling visions from the two previous ghosts of Christmas past and present, and is now wary of what the ghost of Christmas yet to come, which is the future ghost, as we'll refer to it throughout the essay, will reveal. As a prophetic harbinger into what could happen to the rest of Scrooge's life, the yet-to-come ghost is arguably the spirit with the most cause for fear. So the student very clearly telling us, I'm aware of what I'm supposed to be answering for this question, fear, okay, and what Scrooge fears. Okay, so just reminding the examiner that I am on topic here. Specifically, Scrooge fears the gloomy unknown that awaits him. And having seen the miserable consequences of his miserly nature through the earlier visions, he knows that his possible future could look bleak. Fear as one of the primary emotions that Scrooge exhibits in the novel. So here student is again like telling us, I'm not just going to be looking at the extract, but I'm also going to be looking at the novel as a whole and zooming out as my essay progresses. Fear as one of the primary emotions that Scrooge exhibits in the novel traces both the emotional and spiritual transformation that the protagonist undergoes as he moves from merely being afraid of the haunting supernatural occurrences, which are the ghosts and their visitations, to fearing lifelong crippling loneliness, which is a much more mortal fear, right? And this fear, however, is what ultimately activates his epiphanic desire to turn a new leaf and embrace the Good Samaritan spirit, which I will go on to explore in this essay by examining Dickens' characterization and stylistic decisions in the extract given and elsewhere in the novel. Okay, so clear thesis statement of what the student is going to be doing, and also already showing us high-level sophisticated conceptual understanding of how this fear is borne out, not just on an emotional level, but also relevant to the overall spiritual transformation that is, of course, central to Dickens's work. Okay? So, first main body paragraph. Dickens first establishes the future ghost as a Gothic motif. So, Gothic here, contextual point, right? Very much a Victorian fixture, Victorian stylistic motif, right? That's very common in 19th century literature, being this amorphous dark mass filled with ominous energy. The imagery of darkness, that stylistic device, weaves through the extract as the phantom is described as being shrouded in a deep black garment, difficult to detach from the night and separate from the darkness which it was surrounded, right? Bringing in all the quotations that's relevant to illustrating the phantom as this Gothic motif. The metaphor of darkness as a deep black garment carries strong Christian connotations and brings to mind the figure of the devil. which is euphemistically known as the Prince of Darkness. So again, contextual awareness here, because we know that Victorian England was heavily religious and Christian in that sense, right? This association suggests that Scrooge's miserly, cold-hearted dealings towards others could lead him towards hell and its sufferings, rather than heaven and its blessings, which are preserved only for kind and generous souls. And this would have been a preoccupying concern for virtually every Victorian English person, right, back then. Indeed, the phantom's tall and stately but mysterious presence adds to the characterization of a menacing but majestic and overpowering force, right? So building up this character of the future ghost as this formidable source of fear for Scrooge, right? Because it carries the sort of unknown and mystique, but at the same time, very much this sort of Christian moralistic threat, right? That if Scrooge were to carry on with his miserly ways, then it's, a sure path to hell for him. By the way, guys, I'd massively appreciate it if you could hit the thumbs up button below, subscribe to my channel, and switch on that bell notification if you find this video helpful so far. This would really help me carry on making these useful English Lit study videos so that you can get top grades in the subject and we can inspire more people to enjoy the study of literature. So also, by the way, I just want to say throughout the essay walkthrough and all the essay walkthroughs, please pay close attention to the way that the student embeds quotations, because I've come to notice that embedding quotations remains a challenge for a lot of students, right? Because always we're trying to avoid quote dumping, right? Which is the situation where you say, here's a quote, it's all relevant, dump it in there, and then you go on to analyze and explain the quotation as a chunk. But that's not the most elegant and sophisticated way of doing these things. Okay, so moving on to the next paragraph. Dickens also uses a range of emotive and kinesthetic diction to portray Scrooge's fear of the ghost as being both a psychologically troubling experience and a physically discomforting sensation, right? So moving on from the imagery and metaphor of darkness to looking at a wider range of diction, right? Emotive and kinesthetic. His solemn dread is so consuming and all-encompassing that it is expressed through his bodily reactions as well. For instance, bringing in quotations to illustrate, the narrator observes that Scrooge feared the silent shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him, and he found that he could hardly stand when he prepared to follow it, with the emphasis on his trembling, weak legs implying a need to kneel, which is the religious posture of supplication or surrender. So bringing it back to that Christian framework, right? In the allegorical battle between charity and parsimony, Scrooge is at a point where he accepts defeat and promises to change his ways, which he promises in his plea towards the ghost that he hopes to live to be another man from what I was. So really nice sort of associative thinking here, just from observing this simple, seemingly simple gesture, bodily gesture, right? Kneeling, and linking it to that idea of, the sort of Christian moral awareness, right? Of the fear of potentially being punished by God and, obviously ultimately going to hell. And just from this one posture alone, one gesture alone, the student is able to bring it back to that, Christian framework that very much overarches the sort of ethos of this novel, yeah? But apart from the concrete Christian expectation of final day judgment, what Scrooge fears just as much is the future ghost's silence, because the prospect of not knowing how the rest of his life could pan out now that he has seen the error of his ways will leave him in an indefinite state of doubt, remorse, and agony. So this topic sentence shows us that the student is telling us that apart from just fearing what he might see after life, right? Death, being in hell, he also fears how the rest of his existence is going to pan out, right? So this fear isn't just about, the spiritual, right, or the religious, but also very much what he is going to be doing and how he's going to be living out the rest of his life, right? So it's either way he's going to have to fear, because if he continues to live, there is fear. If he stops living now, then there is obviously the clear, concrete fear of hell. right? So she goes on to explain, uncertainty of the future is the greatest source of his fear, which is reflected in his series of reassurance-seeking rhetorical questions towards the ghost. So rhetorical question, right? Clear awareness of a stylistic device in this extract, as he tries to make sense of the situation by asking, if I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come, is that so, spirit? Will you not speak to me? So these three rhetorical questions that we can pick out in the extract, right? Very sharply. The fact that the ghost withholds speech instills a vague, uncertain horror into Scrooge and contributes to the attendant sense of a looming, visceral presence hovering over him with ghostly eyes intently fixed upon him and nothing but a spectral hand and one great heap of black. So the ambiguous sketch of one great heap reinforces the murky lack of clarity that Scrooge so dreads, while the synecdochic references to the ghostly eyes and spectral hand isolate specific body parts that create an impression of a fearsome chimera, right? So the student brings in this sophisticated device of synecdoche, right, which is part of the whole. And guys, if you don't know what synecdoche means, I encourage you to look at my other video in which I explain the difference between synecdoche and its related device metonymy, and also the other related devices which I'm sure you're more aware of, which are metaphor and simile, because they're all in a way comparative devices, right, but with technical nuances. So encourage you to watch that video, which I will link up on the screen somewhere here, or you can find it in the description box below. Yeah. So anyway, in this paragraph, the student very much establishes this present fear, right? Fear of the life and the existence that Scrooge will have to continue to live at, right? The student having already addressed, the sort of Christian hell-related fear, right? The afterlife. While Scrooge claims that he fears the ghost of the future more than any spectre I've seen, his fears of the unsolicited apparitions and what they prophesy are evident early in the novel and extend throughout the plot, right? So segueing from the analysis of the extract and moving on to zooming out on the novel as a whole. So his fears begin when he encounters Marley's ghost in chapter 1, very early on in the novel, who tells him that he is fettered, captive, bound, and double-ironed because he had girded himself to the chain of mindless monetary pursuit when he was still alive, right? And we know that Marley was Scrooge's business partner when he was alive. And the more Scrooge recognizes how he is now living out the sort of sad, solitary existence that Marley's ghost regrets, the more he feels unsettled and anxious, which we see sort of unraveling throughout the course of the novel, as Scrooge goes from trembling more and more to quaking exceedingly, right? So the intensification of his fear, again reflected in his bodily reactions. Scrooge's characteristic disdain, which he had previously expressed with his signature dismissal of humbug, is tempered after this first supernatural incident, meaning that, we see less and less of him saying humbug after he sees, this first visitation of the ghost, as he tried to say humbug but stopped as the first syllable after his exchange with Marley's ghost. So student illustrating this observation with a pertinent quotation, right, which is always important with textual evidence. Finally, with the penultimate paragraph, these feelings of dread, pain, and suffering all come to a head when the future ghost projects his potential final moments at the deathbed, right? Another moment, now that we've looked at the opening of the novel, we look at the end of the novel, right? Looking at the novel as a whole, indeed. Scrooge sees that not only does he die alone with no loved ones by his side, but that his death is jeered at by a group of bystanders with cynical schadenfreude, right? Schadenfreude, this feeling of glee and joy over someone's misfortunes and suffering. Even commenting on the irony of Scrooge's pettiness, now profiting us when he was dead, ha ha ha. The word profiting, obviously ironic, because what did Scrooge care most about when he was alive? Profits, right? And so here now, his only profit, right, that he is able to kind of return to the people that he has mistreated is through his death, right? Of course, imaginary here in this case, right? Hypothetical. This dreadful scene makes him recoil in terror and hits the nail in the miserly coffin for him as he resolves to leave this fearful place, but not leave its lesson, right? And so we see that Scrooge here sees the scene and understands, whoa, okay, if I were to continue on with my miserly ways, then I would really have real cause for fear, because this is, you know, the sort of pathetic and tragic way that I'll be dying, right? With everyone around me taking pleasure in the fact that I've finally left the earth, right? Left the world. Okay, so as such, wrapping up, Scrooge's fears range from metaphysical confusion, right? Metaphysical because it's kind of like, I don't really know whether the ghosts I'm seeing are real or not real, right? When he first encounters the spirits, to epistemological dread, right? There's epistemology, right? The state of knowing, right? Something. When he does not know what his future will hold. And all of this are reflected in Dickens' vivid psychological and physical descriptions throughout the narrative. Yeah? So again, we see that in this essay, not only does the student substantiate her analysis with ample textual evidence, she's also able to bring in a wide range of sophisticated stylistic and rhetorical language devices, right, in her analysis. And of course, we see use of sophisticated, eloquent diction, right, in what is also a cogent, tight and well-structured, well-organized essay, yeah? And of course, so this would be a top grade essay specimen, as always. All right, so I hope this was a helpful sample essay walkthrough, just as an illustration for you guys of how a top grade lit student would write a Christmas Carol essay. And if you haven't already, please do check out my other Christmas Carol essay walkthroughs, link in the description box below. And I also have a couple of other analysis videos that you can check out for your studies. If you want the essay in this video, then I'd encourage you to check out my sample essay pack of 3, which I will link to in the description box below, which is filled with detailed annotations and marking comments according to the official assessment rubrics and objectives. Okay, so link all in the description box below for you to check out. And as always with these videos, they are here to inspire you to come up with your own ideas based on an understanding of what you can aspire to, right? Because ultimately we're here to help you become your best version of a literary expert and get top grades while we're at it. All right, so if you enjoyed this video, please, I would appreciate it if you could hit the thumbs up button below so you can encourage me to keep making these useful study lit videos for you, and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any of my future weekly lit study videos. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.